Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have our next panel discussion on Reimagine 2022, preparing the Indian automotive industry to be future ready. I would like to welcome Mr. Niranjan Gupta, CFO, Hero Motocorp, Mr. G.N. Gauba, CFO, Motherson Sumi Wiring India Limited, Mr. Rahul Bharti, Executive Director, Corporate Planning, Maruti Suzuki India Limited, Mr. Jitendra Barola, Director, Finance, MG Motor India. I would like to invite Nabil Khan, Editor, ET Auto, to please join us, and Nabil will be joining us to moderate this discussion. Over to you, Nabil.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for taking out time and joining us here today. As the topic suggests, Reimagine 2022. We have already reimagined that in 2022 we are meeting physically, and next going forward we will be trying to cut down on the digital and virtual aspect much more in manufacturing. Manufacturing is something that is hardly to be done virtually. Maximum design and development that could happen with the help of simulation and all, or you can manage inventory or something of that sort where you can play technology. But now we are going to talk about how 2022 looked like for you. I'll start with you, Mr. Gauba. You have seen the automobile industry for a long time. You are one of the strongest pillar of automobile industry when it comes to supply chain. We have seen the disruption of supply chain. Now it is mainly around chip shortage, but in the initial days when COVID struck us, we saw several kind of disruption. Sometimes we did not have manpower available. Sometimes the problem was of raw material unavailability. Then we faced the container shortage. How do you reimagine the supply chain scenario in India or for the Indian automotive industry in 2022?
Thank you very much, and good to be here, as you rightly said, in the new environment. Definitely over last 2 years or even earlier also we have faced different kind of challenges, but I think automotive industry is one industry which always have been put to test all these years, sometimes some, but there has to be a positive part of it. The positive part is that the Indian automotive industry is a very close-knit family. The OEMs and the OEM supply chain work very closely with each other. When the pandemic hit in March, April 2020, the need of the hour was to immediately switch over support for a social cause, and Bharti ji is here. We started working on a ventilator or otherwise supporting the society. So definitely we must give a due credit to the automotive industry. In spite of facing the challenges at that point of time, we all came together and ensured that whatever is the need of the hours. We have seen how the oxygen plants were constructed. So definitely, first of all, we have to thank God that in a crisis we all came together and fought this pandemic well together. Definitely, as you rightly say, that there have been volatility, there have been uncertainty, which has caused some kind of a disruption. But positive side has been that there has been a demand from the customer. The consumer have been looking, they have changed themselves, they have gone and looked at the models digitally, decided on something. But at the same time, when the crisis came, commodity prices have gone up, or there have been shortage of the chips, whatever, we have still managed to be flexible. So all the OEMs have worked closely with the supply chain and ensured that let us try to do what best is possible. So it's not that we have caused a complete disruption to the supply chain, but we have found a solution.
So we'll talk about how we have walked past all these crises in 2022 and how smooth it is going to be. I'll come to you again. But before that, the other aspect after supply chain, market is the biggest aspect that we look at when we talk about automobile industry. Rahul ji and Niranjan ji, you represent the top OEMs, or you command majority of the share when it comes to two-wheeler and passenger vehicle. Just want to understand, in passenger vehicle, we had a peak volume of about 3.4 million, which has come down to about 2.7 million units. How do you see the growth potential? How do you see the growth, resurgence as we now, I feel that COVID is out of sight now. I hope there is no further wave coming up. So how will you analyze the growth potential? How do you see the growth path for the Indian automobile industry when it comes to passenger vehicle? You have almost 50% market share. What you see will be definitely what the other will follow. So just want to understand from you.
Of course, since we have come out of COVID and consumers also want to come out, they want to have a good life, they want to taste products, they want to buy. There's some shift towards personal mobility also. So at least the current financial year, the FY 22-23 will be a good year, both for the industry and for Maruti. And we think there are, SIAM has estimates, the auto industry body has estimates. So we are looking at a double-digit growth. So most likely 3.4, 3.5 million should be clearly achievable. With a bit of a disclaimer that supply side shortages, supply side factors keep us in good in good shape, and we hope nothing very untoward comes from as an implication of the Russia-Ukraine situation. I also hope that there are no inflationary pressures because of commodities or because of energy pricing or particular semiconductors. So these pressures keeping aside, on the demand side, we expect good growth, at least for the current year. My concern would be more for the long term.
Long term. What's your thought? What is your concern? Can you spell out?
See, India does have the potential, and we could, as Mr. Gaba mentioned, we could make products that were never made before. I mean, auto industry went into ventilator manufacturing, we went into oxygen PSA plant manufacturing. So we have the capability. Somehow we have not been realizing it in the past. There has been a clear structural long-term, a kind of a slowdown. I'll just give you some numbers. In the decade of 99 to 2000, in that 10-year period, passenger vehicle industry grew at a compounded annual growth rate, a CAGR, of 12.6%. Next decade, 2000 to 2010, it came down to 10.3. 2010 to 2020, it came down to 3.6. And within that, and this is pre-COVID, we are not talking about COVID, it's a long-term. So one-time factors we are taking out of the equation. The last 5 years within this decade, which is 2015 to 2020, industry grew at only 1.3%. Of course, if India has to grow, manufacturing sector is the only sector that can, pull India to high growth rates. Now, some factors have been responsible. Long term, generally, if we look at all over the world, car ownership depends on affordability. Affordability means two factors, car price and per capita income, a simple equation of this. I think this is where India is not moving up. So in the past 5 years, whether it is because of taxation, mostly because of states, at least 15 states have raised local taxes, state taxes, because of regulatory stringency, because of commodity cycle, it has not gone up. And we hope in the future we are able to reverse it. We are able to bring affordability in favor of the consumer in that equation.
Okay. Jitendra ji, I just want to understand your perspective. You are a comparatively newcomer to Indian market. For you, it was a smooth ride initially. You took off, but suddenly economic slowdown triggered by various policy changes that occurred in terms of GST, in terms of demonetization, and also if Rahul ji, last 5 years we have seen much higher number of policy changes, be it on safety side, emission side, than we had in the previous 2 decades, I'll say. So how do you see as a new entrant the market like India? Because the company was very bullish, number did not took off that way, and now there is another challenge of supply chain and others. How do you assess the situation right now?
See, from MG side, especially the numbers which we wanted to deliver, The only thing which is holding up is on the supply chain part. So since we launched our first product, there is good demand in market, and all thanks to the technology, automation, what we pushed with the product. So let me put in 3 buckets. So like when it comes to consumer, they really need unique preferences. So if company is able to provide mobility, which comes the technology. And that's the key mantra here, right? So if you are able to provide more connected car, seamlessly connected between living room, your office, or your mobility space. That's the one thing which is driving all those factors from our side. From volume side, yeah, like compared to Suzuki, we are nowhere. That's true. And but if it comes to like technology and how I see personally from future perspective, like innovative business model, so volume growth will be there to some extent, but how we are able to get into those arenas, so like when it comes to innovative, like can we participate on different revenue stream as well? So today we call it the car as a platform, so all our cars are like connected cars, they provide a lot of connectivity feature, and if we are able to create platform where it's not just selling the car, but we are with the customer day in, day out. So these are the avenues which as a like new entrant and as an auto tech company we are looking around here.
You are trying to carve your own niche by way of providing new set of features, mainly connected, etc. That's the game that you are trying to play.
Yeah,
here,
that's
right?
true, and in fact that's the reality. So more than 50% customer, they really want infotainment system or connected car in place. So in fact, like when it comes to a consumer journey, I think that's going to really disrupt you over the period of time. So the moment you compress the overall journey with less friction and provide a lot of digital platform, I think that's something which is going to disrupt the market as well.
Niranjan ji, two-wheeler market is very dynamic. Look at the drop there from about 21 million units peak. We are at about 15, 16 million. That's a huge drop that we have seen. People thought that the fuel price increase is one of the key reasons. Now again, looking at the geopolitical situation, we see that that is again going to rise up. What's your thought, what's your projection in the immediate future, like 2022? How do you see, like Mr. Bharti just mentioned that this year could be a year when we will go back to the peak volume. How do you see yourself?
Thanks, Nabil, for that comment. First, I'll just start by saying that every drop actually increases the size of the opportunity that you can go up.
Okay.
So I think that's how I would look at the things. And before I come to 2022, I think I would like to just pick up on the overall prospects of Indian economy, because finally it's all linked. Now, if we look at again, I think we get bogged down too much by the current quarter, by Ukraine, Russia and stuff like that. I think you have to say fundamental structure of the Indian economy, which sometimes we forget because there's so many things happening. But you look at per capita consumption, which is there, you look at demographics, those factors have not gone away. So if in the next...
But there's no great growth also
I'll
there.
come to that. Yeah. It's not there, that means the growth in future will be higher. Because eventually, where is the consumption going to come from? The growth comes from consumption. Consumption comes from population. So you can't have a Europe and US growing because it's saturated. So the next decade, the growth has to be from emerging markets. You can leave aside a few quarters here and there, forget those. So I think our view on Indian economy is very bullish for the next decade, and also some of the other emerging markets, the Africa, some of the other markets, Nigeria that we're talking about. Within that, again, when you look at the auto sector, and especially let's look at two-wheeler, the requirement for mobility is not going away. I mean, India is again a story of many Indias. And for those who have traveled to the hinterlands of India, know that there would be probably a size of an Indonesia who do not have a mechanized two-wheeler at home. And that's large, that's huge. Indonesia is 10 million in terms of size. And mobility is not in India a matter of style, at least not two-wheeler. It's a matter of necessity actually. Because the more mobile you are, the more income you can get. The milkman example of going on cycle versus foot versus a motorcycle, you go there and you see how much you can sell and earn. So I think the opportunity for growth is immense, first of all. The key, there are few factors that one needs to do to translate, I would say, that want into a demand upfront. One, I would say finance penetration. India, household debt to actually GDP is very low, as you know. It's around 14-15% compared to developed nation of 60-70%.
Yeah.
I think that needs to go up to translate that want which you have into an immediate demand rather than getting translated into future. The second thing I think is more enabling environment for growth. And I think my colleagues also pointed out, because auto has two-wheelers, four-wheelers all have a multiplier impact on the economy, on employment. I think that needs to be seen from that context, and more enabling environment in terms of ease of regulation, maybe indirect taxes, maybe at least at the commuter end for four-wheelers, two-wheelers. Those need to be looked at because the dividends will be large. Third, I think from an industry side, as an OEM, what we probably need to do more is collaboration. I think we compete very well, but I think we collaborate very poorly. And in collaboration, I take two examples I was thinking today morning. One is telecom, how it forced telecoms to actually collaborate on the back end, the tower spaces, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Now, again, in OEMs, in auto, I think we need to look at collaboration at the back end.
And that's shaping
and compete at the front end. Second, at the front end as well, example I take is category expansion, which is being done by mutual funds. And all of us have seen mutual fund sahi hai. Now, that's a category expanding ad, and that's collaboration. So, I think we need to look at more of collaboration, so that how can we expand the category in consumers' mind. We, as I said, we compete very well, but I think the collaboration is a space that we need to do. And lastly, I would say is digital. Digital is another space. I feel that as an auto industry overall, of course, new players like MG have come and put it ahead in the game. But I think there's a lot of scope in digital across the supply chain. So if we do these things, I think we'll be able to translate the latent demand or the potential into actuals far sooner than one would happen in due course of time.
We see a lot of people say that the growth story that was intact during the COVID was via Bharat. The growth came via Bharat. India was shrinking.
Right.
Now the Bharat situation or the hinterland or the rural market seems to be not doing well. Look at the bullishness in tractor sales. That has hit a break now. Look at the two-wheeler demand from the rural market. That motorcycle sales, which was largely a rural market phenomena, there we see a lot of challenge. How do you see, where will the next set of growth come? How do you see 2022? Everybody, for small car to two-wheeler, everybody was focusing on rural. Now that story seems to be a bit, challenging.
No, not really. So there is a softness in demand from rural side, and that we all know from the numbers. But look at the fundamentals. If you look at agri, has the crop cycle been lower than previous years? The answer is no. Are the prices lower? The answer is no. If at all, maybe this current war that's going on may actually indirectly benefit through the food prices on the agri sector. But so when you look at the fundamentals of the agri sector, of the rural economy, of the crop cycle, of the prices, they're all intact. Now where it's got damaged is translating that income into consumption. And I think there are two fundamental things that have happened. One is, of course, the wave 2 was far severe, which happened, which has led to consumer confidence going down, and therefore people conserving money and not borrowing money for spending. That is, I think, one thing that has happened in rural. The second thing that has happened is that the same income, more people have become dependent because a lot of migrant people, laborers actually went back to rural. Now, as these different sectors open up again, which is opening, hospitality sector, which is hugely employs unorganized sector, etc., etc., I think the dependency of more people on the same income, that will go down and people have more money to actually spend. So I do feel that fundamentally there is nothing wrong. It's about translating that into spending and demand, which I think confidence should come back, and I agree with my colleague that one, there's no reason why a double-digit growth should not happen. Of course, the immediate short term will be how long the war lasts and what is the inflation impact. But leaving that aside, I think there's no reason why the demand would not come back.
But the rural challenge is real. Look at the people looking for Manrega kind of employment, which pays you one of the least wages, has gone up. Still you are you are not able to provide complete full promised day of working to these guys. Look at the situation there. That has already been worsening. So where is the actual ray of hope you see? Arable lands has not increased over the years. You have seen there is a very almost a stable, a number that is there. There is no growth there. So how do you see that?
Nabil, the only sector that has grown consistently during pandemic is agri sector.
But arable land remains same.
Okay, no. Coming to that, it's grown, right? The other, there was a GDP fall, but in agri GDP, no. The second is, after the Manrega is concerned, it's a translation of the same thing, which is migrant labor going back, MSMEs, hospitality sector. All of those are the sectors where the people had to be dependent on Manrega. Now, and those are the people also who are the spending class. Now, as things come back, and if you look at even in government's budget, they have budgeted lower Manrega. It's not that they are going to remove Manrega scheme. It's like that they expect with the sectors opening up, more employment again gets absorbed, and you have less requirement for Manrega scheme. So I think these things will eventually ease out because the fundament, and as far as crop is concerned, it doesn't require more land, honestly. If you look at India's agricultural yield, it's probably 1/3 of where it should be. So yes, that sector, and I have to be very cautious on the words that I choose, but I think that sector requires reforms, modernization, logistics, so that the efficiency goes up and the price between what consumer pays and what the farmer realizes, that gap is actually narrowed. That's where I will stay. Anything more.
I would also like to be optimistic. So you see that this year you will be able to achieve the number that you left at the peak.
I think let's not go to peak and troughs, but I think this year the industry expects a double-digit growth, right? And that's what everyone is working towards. And a couple of quarters here and there, you have to look at long term. I mean, in stock market, people will invest in short term. But in businesses, when we invest for long term.
Okay.
So I think that's where our perspective is. Yeah. So
point well taken. Gaba sir, a lot of it depends on your soldier. Supply chain. Since beginning, I have been talking to a lot of OEMs, lot of manufacturers, new age manufacturers. They all are complaining that there is a bottleneck at the supply chain. You tell me, can you assure your OEMs, your customers, that this year it is going to be eased out? And which are the corners that you think you are getting positive vibes that these?
He has a huge presence across.
Across geography, Europe, China. You have so many plants everywhere. You are present. So tell me, how is it?
Thanks for the kind word, but I think it is very important to be a partner to OEM, which we have been. We, even in the starting days when we had a phased manufacturing program, we used to do a lot of localization. We did joint ventures at Motherson wherein we brought the latest technology, so we have been considered as one of the best partners for the JVs. Wherever we could not get the JV partners, we have gone and acquired the entities. So we are there for our customers, investing ahead of time, even doing an acquisition for the global customers, but getting the technology to the Indian market. Because Indian market is very important and we are very positive on the Indian market because the car penetration is still very low. And India is the best place where you can have your understanding with the OEMs to give them a solution who are willing to change. So that is a very positive part of it, and we continue to build our capacities not only for the manufacturing but design development, bring latest technology, be it with the joint venture partner, be it from the acquired entities, or do it ourselves also. So you will never find that Motherson is found wanting. All our OEMs can be rest assured that we will always be investing ahead of the time.
No, I'm not talking about one company. You are representing your entire
group,
component industry.
Yes, so I think that is a good thing. In India, the component industry, the tier 1, have been very positive because we are coming from a difficult circumstances. We are not getting any business on a platter. We are competing against the foreign players. We are competing against the volumes because the volumes have not been great. Yet we have gone and invested and as we have made investment in a manner that we can cater to huge varieties, which is the biggest strength. And as Bhatiji said, that is the strength of the engineering people. How many engineering colleges we have? So it is best to use our talent to give the best solution to the industry. And automotive industry does not just contribute directly, but contribute to the entire ecosystem. You look at the petrol pumps, even when the EV comes, the EV infrastructure, it will require to be developed across the highways. So definitely the automotive industry is the bloodline of the economy. So, and we are committed to it.
The front line itself, dealership has about 25,000 dealerships across India, 15,000 dealer principals.
Employees,
Yeah.
now it's much higher.
No, dealerships across India. Yeah, including all OEMs, two-wheeler, yeah, and 15,000 dealer principals. So they employ a lot of people. That's also
Drivers,
yeah,
car
everything.
washers, insurance, finance,
Parts guys,
Parts,
mechanics.
banking.
mechanics, the road
That's
side
the
mechanics.
big important area. Rahul ji, for Suzuki, India is a unique market anywhere in the world where one OEM has about 50% market share in passenger vehicle space.
We have Hero.
No, I'm talking about passenger vehicle and also in two-wheeler also. So after this, all this disruption happening, people are talking about electrification, any form of electrification, hydrogen fuel or anything, or BEV or PEV. Does it worry you that you might not have that kind of market share when the change happens? Or how are you gearing up to manage this transition?
Okay. Honestly, market share is not the top three of our concerns. Our concern is macroeconomic growth of India. If that happens, automatically we grow. And I believe we have space for everybody to grow. One. Two, each choice is being made by a retail consumer or by a household. If you give him or her a compelling reason to buy, he or she will choose your product. The product has to be a package. It has to be a package of performance, of space, of efficiency, of style, of latest technology, as he said, infotainment, and of course, finally at the right price. So if you give him a compelling reason to buy, you never need to bother about market share. And you have to take care of the customer over the extended period of time, service, take back the car after he is done. And now we've opened recycling, so if they need to dispose the car, that can be done. Your second question was on other technologies. So what I would like to say is, see, decarbonization is a large perspective. It includes within itself several technologies and these technologies are not the end. They are a means to the end. The end is decarbonization, or let's say at some stage carbon net zero. Now several technologies can take you there. What we have to see as industry or as an Indian is, how do we capture the bulk of the fleet emissions and reduce the CO2 to the bare minimum. So we have to look at per car emissions, and we have to look at how many more percentage of the portfolio that we can cover. So, and I believe genuinely that all technologies will be required by India to achieve this decarbonization. EV is one strong technology. It reduces emissions. Of course, there's a element that power production in India itself is coming from some hydrocarbon burning, and there is work happening there in terms of renewable, etc. The other aspect is, for example, natural gas. Now, natural gas has the potential to affect a large percentage of the portfolio, anywhere from 10, 15, 20, going up to maybe 50%. And even so similarly, and electrification is a family of technologies. Within electrification, you have hydrogen car. A hydrogen car is also actually an electric car. You have plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, you have strong hybrid electric vehicles. And the newest, set of technologies is biofuels. For example, ethanol. Now, ethanol seems to be a powerful combination. It seems to be, doubling farmers' income, helping towards that. It can help CO2 emissions because of the life cycle effect. So all technologies will have to be pursued. And somewhere this thought exists in the mind of the government also, because the Prime Minister's speech of 15th August last year, it was also a speech on energy strategy of the country. He talked about hydrogen, he talked about electrification, he talked about natural gas, and he talked about biofuels. So somewhere the thought resonates that all technologies have to be pursued for maximum carbon footprint reduction.
Jitender, you are a new entrant. You just said that you are a very small fry in a big pond when you compare with Maruti Suzuki. Does these kind of disruption and changes that is shaping up in the entire automobile industry, like we are talking about electrification and all that, does it make you hopeful that you will be not that small, or you will be able to gain faster?
It's not about how big or how much volume we can fetch from the industry. It's more about like how we look the future in terms of mid-term or slightly longer term. So obviously, yes, as Mr. Bharti mentioned, there are certain things which are going to be there. So if you talk about ICE, ICE or even the other gases, yes, it's remaining. Now coming back to your point, like how we look, it's typically CASE case in our case. So like we call it like connected, autonomous, shared mobility and EV. And that's we are really optimized.
Do you think you will ride on this to be closer to at least what the biggies are, right? I'll just come to you. Niranjan has to leave for an important meeting, but before you go, I just want to understand from you, how do you see electrification changing the two-wheeler landscape in India? You have invested in startups, and also you are doing your own. You launched your brand last week. So how do you see, what is your breakup in terms of volume when it comes to two-wheeler?
See, first of all, I think we heard our colleagues say that electrification is here to stay. Equally, I think the point that was being made was that all forms of energy, it's not just EV, but all forms of energy will coexist. So I think that's the other thing that's going to be there. The third thing, which is more applicable for two-wheelers, is that if you break it up into motorcycle and scooters, most of the electrification in the coming decade is going to be scooters and not motorcycles, simply because motorcycle requires a significantly more amount of battery capacity and more power, more range, and it will not be affordable. So when you look at that way, the motorcycles, which is a big space, which is 70% of the industry, will migrate to EV perhaps in the next decade, and the first decade will be more about scooters, which is 30% of the industry. So the industry, pretty much the ICE and EV will coexist for pretty long period of time. So as far as we are concerned, clearly in the space of scooters, we invested in Ather Energy 6 years back, 5 years back as a startup space. Our own product is ready, brand has been unveiled, launch has been, product launch first of July we are talking. Plus from the customer perspective, we are looking at providing convenience, and therefore not only fixed charging but also swapping solution, which then reduces the charging time. So I think we are going whole hog into this, but equally I think one should be mindful that there is a huge motorcycle industry.
You tell me, 30 million units of capacity being created by electric two-wheeler startups.
Right.
How do you see this? In just 5 years, they expect that they will be able to produce that much. What's your thought?
Right. So while I'll not give you a direct answer, to this question, but let me give you 2-3 elements. One, that it is always true that cash burn can last only for a few years. It has to give place to cash earn at some point in time. That's number one. Number two is multiplication and fragmentation eventually leads to consolidation. So therefore, currently it's a phase of huge investments, multiple players all coming in. Finally, it will be survival of people and players who are getting the customer game right and who are in it for the long term. So there will be a phase of consolidation, right? So today's gains, eventually there will be some pain that will also come and then it will settle down to actually normative levels what it should be. So I wouldn't go by what capacities are being put. Let it be there. It's good. It's good for the category expansion.
Niranjan will continue this discussion. I have a lot of questions, but for now you have something urgent to catch up.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks,
See you
and
soon.
very sorry I have to leave this
No
in between
problem.
just for the meeting. But thanks to all my colleagues.
Before I start taking questions from the audience, especially the virtual audience, I'll ask one final question from you, Rahul. How do you see the way to net zero for India?
I think it will be an extremely interesting journey. Individual manufacturers and will come up with technologies, and there will be a lot of innovation. All possible routes will have to be open to all possible routes of decarbonization, and we have to move towards this global objective. We also have to be conscious that in the process this will impact, this will raise the cost of the vehicle. So we have to evolve solutions which are good for India, which are unique to India. We need not copy any particular country because that country may have a different context. A lot of thinking, innovation, technology will go into it, and it will be an exciting journey.
Okay, thank you. This question comes from viewer, Gaba Sahab and Jitender ji, both of you can answer this. Do you see financial management getting completely or at least almost automated with machine learning and AI? What's your thought? You are living in the technology era. So.
I think technology can never replace the human minds. That is a bottom line. I mean, let's not underestimate the power of the human mind. First of all, technology can only be the enabler. It can fast track. We have gone into a lot of automation, and if you really look at Maruti Suzuki and the OEM suppliers have been working on a great integration, not from now but since ages. So there would be more and more integration, there would be more automation, and we can talk about any technology, we can talk about blockchain, we can talk about anything that will only fast track the reaction time, which is the need of the hour. But we as a finance manager would still have a lot of job to do. That's my view.
Yeah, that's true. And in fact, though human interface remains same, but still, yeah, I'm actually slightly bullish on technology part. Like when it comes to AI, it definitely innovation gives a lot of quick turnaround time, right? So when it comes to invoice processing and all those things, I think it really works. But yeah, still human remains same, right? So you may require some lesser heads, but technology is going to support a lot. Yeah.
Rahul ji, I know that you have to leave. So one last final question. Do you also consider your tier 2, tier 3 suppliers who are considered to be weak link? How do you see their funding? Do you try to be an enabler or try to assist them, help them in any which ways?
I think it's a very relevant question.
Especially after this, COVID, because a lot of trouble happened.
There is weakness at the tier 2 or tier 3 level in terms of automation, in terms of being able to invest in the right equipment, in terms of systems, technology, management, bandwidth. And if we strengthen this strata, I think Indian auto industry will get a huge head start. So now the issue is that the number of tier 2, we have about 400 to 500 tier 1 suppliers. The number of tier 2 suppliers would run into thousands.
Okay.
So it's a practical scalable problem. How do you, skip one level and reach the tier 2 level? But what we have been trying to do is all the good practices, our shop floor practices, our payment and cash flow and financial discipline practices with T1, we are trying to request our T1 to inculcate the same practices in our T2, because directly it's difficult to reach that level. And we see a lot of potential there. If this section of the manufacturing chain improves, the whole industry will get a head start.
Thank you, Rahul, for joining us today. Thank you so much. It was really pleasure talking to you.
So nice.
We'll continue the conversation. I understand you have a meeting to catch up. Thank you. Sir, I will come back to you again. The biggest challenge that entire discussion is shaping up in the last 6 months, I have seen that it is again the same question comes in, you know, the supply chain issue. Now look at the market. I think let's be a bit optimistic as we end the COVID situation right now. I see that there will be positive, a rebound in the market that will require a lot of production. And we have seen the component industry or the backroom of the industry putting pause on the investment, capacity expansion. Do you think this is going to create another kind of crisis there, or how is the auto component space or the supply chain space ready to manage that kind of rebound?
See, while it would be very difficult for me to make any representation for the industry, but at Motherson we have been continuously investing. So we have not stopped our investment cycle, because the worst thing you would do is second guessing your customers. The customers' model developments take about 18 months, 12 months, 24 months. So, and there is a forecasted volume. They are in the best position to do that based on their own market study or their consumer preferences. So we have been investing, so we continue to invest, be it in terms of the manufacturing facility, be it in terms of training of the people. So we carry a huge redundancy cost in that manner, but we are willing to pay for that, because the last thing you would like to do is a stop customer line. So you be very sure on that.
How do you see this, you know, though working capital is one of the very minuscule part of entire, you know, automotive, operations, but how important is it in times like this to manage that efficiently or judiciously? What are the roles, and, you know, how are you trying to make it more efficient?
Yeah, and I mean, like, though it's the minuscule part, but still I would say it's a very important when it comes to business as a financial managers, right? So, because it's not just working capital, it creates a lot of efficiency or inefficiency as well. So when it comes to at back end, you look around the like supply chain or payables and how we arrange the funds, everything matters here. And that's where, like, I would say my personal view will be, it's very important. So how we arrange the fund, how we make payment, and how we support our ecosystem as well. Like when it comes to suppliers, if they are getting accelerated payment through some mode, it really helps business overall also.
What are the biggest challenge you face in this space, and how are you trying to tackle that? And do you look forward to any technology innovation, or you look around the startups that are coming up in this space? What would be your piece of advice or the kind of help you will seek from them? I'll ask both of you, starting with you.
So maybe
yes.
Yeah.
No, it's a good thing that today we have a possibility, we have a lot of options where digitalization can help you, can also help your supply chain. And one of the factors which comes positive is that if you are talking about tier 2, if they are wanting to have some money, and if somebody is willing to pay any interest rate and all that, you can judge the health of those supply chain. What is there something going wrong? Definitely one has to respect both the receivables as well as the payables. So we at Motherson ensure that our suppliers are well paid on time, and we are continuously working with them. And in order to address the issue which you were talking about of the tier 2, we at Motherson got into a lot of joint ventures. So we not only did what we directly supply to the OEM, but whatever child part go into that, we have made substantial investment into that, and wherever the need be, we could get the joint venture partner to bring those technology. So we continue to focus on that, and wherever there is a need to bring strengthen the supply chain, we go and get a joint venture partner to strengthen that.
Okay. What's your thought on this?
Yeah, I think what Mr. Gawar said, and just to add, like, thanks to this old startup wave or fintech wave, you can say, right? So that's where there are possibility to integrate your tier 1, tier 2 suppliers in the entire ecosystem as well. It may take some time, but yeah, I think it's possible just to create this entire ecosystem. Yeah.
Going forward, is there a big challenge or major challenge that you would look forward to be solved by these startups that are coming up in the space right now? If you have to throw an option to these startups, like come up with this solution, we'll be open to accept that. Is there something in your mind that you want immediately to be resolved that is not being resolved so far?
From fintech side?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're already working a lot on that part. So like integrating at backend to tier 1 and tier 2 level as well. And that's where the moment industry player, we are able to see the benefits, it's going to help. And that's, I think we don't need to tell them, they're already working a lot on that side as well today. So that's how it is from my side.
So that's it on this Reimagine 2022, preparing auto industry to be future ready. It was a great insight from you, Gaba sir, Jitender, you added a lot of value. We had great discussion with Niranjan and Rahul also. Thank you so much everyone for joining us today on the virtual platform, and also those who joined us here. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you.
Naveen.
Thank you.